All right, Matt, welcome to the podcast, man. How are you?
Don, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. I feel like this is one that's overdue. You and I have known each other. We don't know each other closely, but we've run in the same circles. And of course, I know that you provide products and services to a bunch of coaching friends of mine. And we've talked at the convention and stuff. And we,
hmm
like to interact about silly stuff online with soccer. And I just feel like this is one that's overdue.
Yeah, I think we actually met through Jack Burridge, if I'm remembering right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
Jack's obviously a good friend of mine. We go way back to Fairfield University days of playing together. Fun fact, he was my like my big, I guess, for my official visit there. And so he was in charge of like chaperoning me and stuff. And then I paid him back conveniently by we were doing this ladder drill, and I hate ladders, but we were doing this ladder drill and he was ahead of me and I accidentally tripped and moved the ladder, and he sprained his ankle, and he was out for like 8 weeks, and he was always injury prone. So it was a running joke that I had just like ended his college career because from a ladder drill, basically. So yeah, I think that's how he made the connection was Fairfield way back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. That now that all that comes flooding back. Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Um, you've got obviously you played it. So tell us a little bit about your career. So you played in college, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
At
so
at
I played
Fairfield.
at Fairfield. I played at Fairfield U for 4 years. So for those that don't know Fairfield, it's a Division I school in Connecticut. Both my parents were actually alumni of the school. It was a place that was really close to my heart in terms of some place I wanted to play. When I was there, I had the opportunity to do a study abroad in Ireland in my spring semester because I was always of the opinion that college springs were a bit of a waste in terms of like me getting better and having the opportunity to challenge myself. You play a couple games, you play like 4 or 5 games, but it's not really uh, not that they're throwaway games, but they're not really meaningful games because you'll play the group that doesn't have a chance to usually play. And for me, I went to Carl Reese, who was the coach at the time, and I think he thought I was actually quitting because he like I was like, hey, like I just need to have a meeting with you, and I was like, I'm gonna do a study abroad program in Galway, Ireland, and I'm going to go to NUI Galway, which is right in the city, and see if I can link up with a team or two there and train and be in that kind of more professional, like challenging environment, and use that to try and leverage my way into at the time it was called PDL. Obviously now it's USL League Two. Um, but I had struggled to find a summer team because I didn't have like the greatest playing resume. I'm playing at a small Division I school, and those summer teams are very competitive. So my thought process was if I go over there, I can leverage that. One, hopefully I'll become a better player and I'll be in a really uncomfortable environment, which I think is really important for growth. But I can leverage that to when I'm coming back, say I played for whoever the club was, and use that to get into a USL summer team so I can continue to play through the summer. And that plan actually worked. Like being able to tell the USL the PDL teams that I was coming from Salt Hill Devon, who at the time were in the Irish Second Division. I think they've since lost their League of Ireland license to I think they gave it back to like Galway FC or something. But that worked because the clubs were like, "Oh yeah, we'd love to have you." So I went from having no opportunities to play with these summer teams to all of a sudden being able to kind of pick where I wanted to play. So I ended up playing PDL for FC Westchester because it was local. It was the most local club that I could get to. It was about a 45-minute drive from my house in Connecticut. And then after I graduated, I went and played a year in Germany for a fifth division team, which was an interesting experience. If we want to talk about that one, it was great being over in Europe and again being in a really uncomfortable environment. But while I was over there, I really came to the conclusion that I wanted to coach. and I was like, I can try and chase this pro career and be in and out of these teams for the next 5 to 10 years. But for me, it wasn't as rewarding as working with players and coaching them. And I had actually started coaching my senior year of college. So I was already like in that mindset. So when I went over to Germany, some of the sessions I was like, you put your coaching brain on and think like, how would I do this differently? And that actually hurt me a little bit as a player because instead of being like all in on the activity, I'd be like, well, this is stupid, or I would do this differently. And I knew once my brain started going that route, I was like, I kind of need to get out of playing at some stage because instead of being immersed as a player, I'm thinking, how would I make this better as a coach for the players that are in it? And that was kind of the end of my playing career. But I had the chance to play against Eintracht Frankfurt in a friendly, which was the best playing experience for me that I'd ever had. And I was like, I'm gonna kind of cap it there. I got to play against Timmy Chandler. Lucas Piazon was in the team. And for me, it was like, I could try and chase this for a while, but I think I want to get into coaching because that's what I'm most passionate about. So that was kind of the period on my playing career, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah, look, we all get there. We all get there at a certain point. Your path sounds in many ways similar to what my own son went through. Except he went to England for a couple of years after high school, but and then trialed at FC Cologne in Germany when Podolski was there with the
Hmm.
under 20s. And same thing. That I think that really sprungboard him into coaching, seeing what the possibilities were. But it also, as a player, helps you see your frailties, you
Hmm.
know. And while he ended up playing in college and tried to play a little bit afterwards, and like you did in the summer leagues with out here out west with the Frogs and a couple of other teams, but it shows you what your frailties are and it shows you what your ceiling is. And I think that's one of the things missing with a lot of players here in the United States is they play at a comfortable level. They're sort of a big fish in a small pond, or at least they fit into the pond and aren't getting eaten, right?
Yeah.
But they are not going to go swim with the sharks. And
Hmm.
they have no desire to go swim with the sharks. They avoid swimming with the sharks.
Hmm.
And I think that that slows you down. And then I think it also gives players, you tell me what you think, but I think it gives players a false sense of reality of what their abilities are.
Yeah, I think that cliche phrase of being, comfortable in the uncomfortable is something that in this country is lacking for sure. At the club level, at the college level, I mean, how often do we actually see like younger players playing up an age or two to challenge them? Usually it's like from the club's perspective, they think I need to keep this player in their own age group because they help the team tremendously. Then the team's going to win more games, win more tournaments. We get more clout as an organization instead of saying, well, maybe that kid is actually better served playing up a year or two because that's going to challenge them more. They'll be maybe not in their friend group, and now they have to, get used to these new players. It's something that we've tried to do at Fox. So now I'm the director of performance and an academy coach at Fox Soccer Academy Carolinas in Charlotte. And Christian Fuchs is our founder, and obviously he comes from Europe, and one of the big things for him is trying to have that academy style model here in the US because there's not too many programs that do it where we tell every player when they come in, we say, your place is not guaranteed. We actually card every player for both leagues. So we have a first and second team, and every kid is carded for both teams. And we say, listen, like if you come in and you're in the second team and you absolutely kill it, we will move you up to the first team. And we can give you like 15, 16 examples of that. And we're not going to wait until tryouts to do it. We're going to do it in season. We'll move you up. We'll do it on day one if we realize we've misplaced you and you actually belong at that higher level team. And I think that's something that in this country, like after a tryout and a kid gets an offer for an ECNL or GA team, like they'll just grab the offer because they're like, yes, I'm in. Like that's where I'm at. Where we're kind of like, no, like you every day you have to come in and you have to bring, the intensity, the energy, like you have to show up. You cannot just coast, because if you do that, and I experienced it a little bit this season. I had the U19 team, which I'm sure you know is always challenging when you get to the back half of the season, because kids are either checked out because they're not playing in college, or they start to stop showing up because they think that well, I am already committed, so I don't need to do the work anymore. And I
Right.
told every kid, I was like, if you want to be a part of the summer program, you're going to come to everything. And if you don't, you will not get invited to it. And, some kids, they were like, okay, yeah, I'll be at everything. And then you have others where they didn't take it seriously. And then they come back after, like, well, can I join the summer programs? Like, no, like, I'm not taking your money. Like, we told you, like, that was the standard. You have to be here. And if you're not here, then sorry, like, you're not going to be a part of the program. Like I told you before we started the recording, we've grown the summer program from one team to two. We were at like 60 players now in both teams combined, and all those kids know they have to come to everything, because if they're not showing up, they're not going to get picked for the games that they want to play in. So yeah, I think in this country we really lack that, especially at the youth level, and I think people are afraid to have difficult conversations with people, because it's way easier to just go throughout the season, not say anything, get to tryouts, and then either drop the player or the player leaves, and you don't have to have that difficult conversation with them about trying to get better or the things that they need to do, to improve. I've actually really started to value having those conversations earlier with kids and tell them, listen, if you want to be in the first team, your training habits are crap. They have to get better. And if they don't, like, if I wait until tryouts to tell them that, I've wasted 4 months with them. And that's not good for them. That's not good for the environment. It's not good for us either. So yeah, I think in this country we could definitely use with a little bit more fight and grit, and being okay telling people the truth about certain things. I don't think we do it enough.
No, there's a saying that I throw out online a lot because I truly believe it, and it's that players they need to hear what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. And there's
Hmm.
not enough people telling kids what they need to hear. They're telling them what they want to hear. They want to keep everybody happy. They want to keep the peace. And like a lot of coaches, fair enough. Look, uncomfortable conversations are called uncomfortable for a reason. I don't know that it's easy for anybody unless you're a psychopath that you tell people that you're not very good. Here's where you're struggling. This is what you need to do to get better. But I so love what you just said, in that those conversations are much more comfortable if they happen early and often. That's why, as a
Hmm.
college coach, I always had an open door policy. And I would, if I did anything unusual, I mean, one year I can think about, I had two I was at a junior college, head coach at a junior college. I had two sophomore keepers that were very good. One had done extremely well for us the year before, and I had a freshman that was outperforming them. And I
Hmm.
pulled them in game one, two, early in the season, in the preseason, and pulled in all three keepers. And we talked about who was doing what better than who. And I explained to them exactly why the freshman was getting starts.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
and you know what? The sophomores responded and got better, and then passed up the freshmen.
Hmm.
And I think that those early conversations, and having them early and often, and having them in training, I don't think any player should be surprised at the end of a season meeting, uh, uh, the debriefing that every college coach and hopefully every youth coach has. At the end of the season, you debrief a player and you tell them, what's going to have to happen for them to get better. Those meetings should be short. They should be
Yeah.
very short. Every player should already know where they stand based on their daily interactions with the coaches, and if the communication's good.
Yeah, communication is so important. I think for colleges, and this is the big difference between obviously college and club, is in club the players are paying to be there, and so the organizations treat them like paying customers, which is you don't want to rock the apple cart. Whereas in college, you're much more in that European meritocracy where it's like my job is on the line. I have to win. So I'm gonna, if having this difficult conversation makes you a better player, makes the team better, then we have to have it early, even if it stings a little bit. It's what needs to happen. Because we have the World Cup coming up, I'll give a great example of that. So when I was a senior at Fairfield, Matt Turner was obviously at Fairfield as well, and he was a sophomore. His Actually, I don't know if he was a freshman or a sophomore. I think he might have been a freshman, but his first interaction in the college game was he got subbed into a game against Iona, which was our big conference rival, because the starter wasn't doing very good. So he got pulled at halftime. And so Matt goes in, and the first shot he faces, you could probably find this on YouTube. The ball gets struck from about 35 yards. It hits the top of the crossbar and goes straight up in the air about 30 yards. And Matt turns around to catch it, and he palms it into the goal, and we lose 1-0. And that put us out of the conference playoffs. I think that was pretty much the end of my senior year because we couldn't qualify, to try and make the tournament. And I'm sure the conversations with Matt were, and I'm sure internally he probably felt, devastated that he had let the group down. But we had seen in training that little glimpse of him was not who he was as a goalkeeper. Like, he was a quality goalkeeper. He was a little raw, and he had a great goalkeeping coach, so that really helped him. But from that moment, he really sprung into, like, I think the next season, this was after I left, but he had the best goals against average in the NCAA. He had given up like less than half a goal, or maybe like 7/10 of a goal a game.
Wow.
So he took that from being an unrecruited, non-scholarship kid, and his first moment in a game is catastrophe, and he builds on that, and then goes into the Rebs invite him into preseason. He kills it with that. He gets signed, and then before you know it, and obviously he's bounced around a little bit. He was at Arsenal, and he's had some ups and downs in his career. But oh my God, like, what an amazing turnaround from having that one moment. For a lot of people, that would be the end of their playing career in college, never mind making it into the Premier League. I'm sure it was the result of him reacting to a difficult moment and having difficult conversations, but knowing that he was going to come out the better of it, and he wasn't going to shy away from that. Even though that moment then got sent into ESPN, and they played it on the Not Top 10, I kid you not, for
Oh
probably
no.
like six
Yeah.
months. So we'd be sitting in Barone, which was the campus center, and they had these big screen TVs up there,
Oh
and we'd look
no.
up, and we're like, oh my God, here it is again. Because it's like they would play the number one until something else knocked it out. And so not only was it a terrible moment for him, but he's reliving it like every day on the screens. But I mean, that just speaks to his character, how he responded to that. And that is very unique, especially in an American, I think, athlete, because I think we're a little too coddled in this country. So yeah, I hope he starts in the World Cup again. I hope he gets another opportunity to show his quality, because he mentally just, yeah, unbelievable guy. But yeah, I think we could use a few more of those too.
We talk about you just said you talked about the American players being a little too coddled. Um, tell us about your experience in Germany, because we've never talked about this,
Hmm.
but I know how things are overseas. I mean,
Yeah.
I've been overseas. I've been to multiple countries and been on pro pitches, and I've heard how players are talked to. And then, not to mention my own son's own experience in England. That's a whole other story. That it's his story to tell, but it
Yeah.
it it would make American parents, they would talk about suing people when they talk about the abuse. But what was your experience in Germany? Was that your first waking up to, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore? I know it's the same sport, but it's different.
I would say my first waking up was actually in Ireland, because I did that before.
Yeah.
So I had some idea of what I was getting into, and I can remember being, with Irish players, and I was 19 at the time, and I was playing with guys that are 38, 39 years old, guys that had played in the League of Ireland for 15, 20 seasons. And I remember the first day I got there, the manager he was like, listen, you don't have to wear your shin pads in training, but if you take a knock and you go down and you grab it, I never want to see you in training again. Like you can take your stuff and leave. And I was like, all right, that's that is the standard. And a lot of the guys obviously didn't train in shin pads, but you would see the tackles, flying in, studs up. So I had some sense of what I was getting into when I went to Germany. So in the German club I was at was FCA Darmstadt. So for those that don't know Germany, it's about an hour outside Frankfurt. Frankfurt's like the financial capital of Germany, really. So you flew in there, and then you drive about an hour to get to Darmstadt. And Darmstadt had another club called SV Darmstadt, who were in the second division in Bundesliga, and they were pushing for promotion into the Bundesliga that year. So everyone was all excited about them. So we were kind of like the throwaway club
But
down the
you were in
street.
the Oberliga?
I've It's been about 10 years. It was like Oberliga, or it was either fifth or sixth division.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
Oberliga fifth. I'm not sure what it is below that. But
yeah,
yeah, okay, we get the idea. All right.
yeah. So, and all those leagues are very similar. You don't really get the big jump until you hit that third division. Third division Bundesliga is when it
Sure.
gets like real. But I remember being in training, and in fairness, like our that club brought over a lot of American players. So there was probably, I would say, 12 of us there that were American. And then we had, and all guys that were right out of college and trying to make it. Like we had a guy from University of South Florida. We had a guy that played at Syracuse. We had a guy that played at some of the Canadian colleges, and then you had a mix of the German guys. And I remember specifically in training, we were doing a rondo, and someone came in studs up on me, like really raised. I was like, "You better not effing do that again." And he ended up headbutting me, and we both like fell back in like not like a headbutt where like like you grab your head and you're like, oh, you try and embellish it a bit. Like we were both like full on bleeding. And I'm like, oh my, like I was like, what just happened? But that was like not that that would happen every week, but like no one really like got upset about it. If that was something that happened here, I feel like everyone gets called into the principal's room, and it's like you get expelled from the club. The manager just brought us in and he was like, "Are you good with him?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Are you, or vice versa?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, like get on with it." And actually that guy ended up becoming one of my better friends at the club. But that type of incident would, I mean, it might, maybe it happens here, but I think it's more of like, hey, we're all in this together. Let's push on, and we all are trying to get signed by other clubs here. So let's not like let that moment ruin anything. But yeah, it's a different environment. I mean, you have to, every training session, your job is on the line, or your place in the team is on the line, and we had enough players in the squad that you don't make the 18 sometimes. So like dealing with that as a negative moment. I know in college, I mean, like you can not make the travel team, but it doesn't quite feel the same as being left out of a semi-pro team when you're there away from your family, and it's like, okay, well, what do I do today? Do I go into the town? Like, do I just hang out? Like, it takes a different kind of mental fortitude, I think, to deal with that. But that's how you get better. Is you're like, okay, figure out what I need to do to get in the team and keep working hard in training, and use that as motivation to earn a spot, because nothing's being given to you. You have to earn it, because if they get relegated, like the club's in trouble. So like every game
Right.
matters. Luckily, when we were there, we were mid-table comfortably, so it wasn't like we it was that significant. But every game was still treated the same, as like, we need to win this game. It's important. And I think that was something that I realized in the spring at college wasn't quite treated the same. And I thought that kind of hurt my development a little bit. Is the games, you played in the games, but it was like, okay, you win or lose the spring game, who really cares,
Right. No, that's true, and you're right. I think that is probably. It's funny. The minute that I started hearing about this 21st century model, which is what they were calling it now, it's the two-semester model.
Mhm.
But that's the men's game wanting to play, split the season up between both semesters. And the minute I heard about it, I thought, brilliant. This is absolutely great. And then the very first podcast we did was with Bobby Clark,
Mhm.
who, for those that don't know, coached at Notre Dame and Stanford. His son's Jamie, who's at University of Washington now. And Bobby had a different take. He said, I like the fact that it's lower key because I can really focus on player development and spending time with players. and really working on their weaknesses, which gears them up for the fall next year. And I thought that that's also an excellent point.
Yeah.
I can't argue that. And my entire coaching career in college, that's how we used our spring, was to
Hmm.
really work on and spend more time in the weight room and spend more time on getting them into summer and really feeling what fit was going to be like so they could go into their summer teams and
Hmm.
really perform well with their summer teams and then come back in the fall. And I thought, oh, that's a good point. So I am conflicted with both sides of it. What do you think about this two semester model concept, which, by the way, I don't think is going to pass. I think it's a
Yeah.
50-50 shot at best. And if it was up to coaches, yes, it would pass. I think if it was up to players, at least on the men's side, it would pass. But it's not. It's up to administrators. They're the ones holding
Yeah.
the purse strings, and people don't understand it is going to cost more money because
Hmm.
your trainers out of college, you know, they work with a team at a time in a season. They've still got the same number of set trainers, and if you add an extra sport into the spring, that means they're gonna have to hire extra trainers. They're going to have to hire extra ground staff because you don't maintain a college pitch in the spring the same way that you maintain it in the fall. You don't have to line it as often. You don't have to mow it as often. It's just treated differently. It's going to cost money,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
administrators don't like to spend money. So that's why I think it's not going to pass, but it might.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I've flipped on this a little bit. I for the longest time, because even playing in it, I was like, there's too many games in the fall. Like it really feels like you don't have time to train.
That I agree with.
Every college coach I talk to with regards to PlayerPulse is like, the reason the app is so valuable to them is they're like, we need to understand how these guys are feeling because we get so few days to really push them because it's always game recover, game recover, game recover.
Right.
And so initially, I was of the personal opinion. I was like, man, if this was split over, an 8 month season, it would be so much better. You wouldn't have to have as many games. And then when the actual proposal came out, it still said like 14 games in the fall or something along those lines. And I don't know if maybe that's changed. I mean, maybe you can enlighten me if part of the proposal is having 14 in the fall and like 8 in the spring or something like that. But to me, 14 even sounds like too many games in from September to December. I mean, you want to be in the flow of like 1 to 2 games a week, being able to train at least 3 to 4 times, being able to have those overload sessions at least once a week. And I know like the girls are definitely much more opposed to this than the boys. I think that's why the girls one didn't pass at all because they were like the student athletes that were asked said no, we don't want this. Um, but they did expand their preseason, right? They now have a longer preseason that's going to happen in
That's
2027.
right.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. They start earlier.
So I think that's a really positive step in the right direction. We know like the build ups. You have such limited time with your team. You come in and like day one, it's like you're doing fitness tests, you're doing this, you're doing 3 sessions a day. And I remember the year at Fairfield that we won the MAC and we went unbeaten in conference, we went unbeaten in the postseason. We had very few injuries, and I if I recall correctly, that was actually the year we didn't do any fitness testing because like something happened and the coach wasn't there and we were just able to go straight into playing, and so we had very few injuries, so we played with a lot of the same team consistently, and that's why I think we had so much success that year. And obviously we also had an older team. That was when Jack was a grad student. But I don't know if it's good or not. I think what you're eventually going to see is a split where you're going to have the top 50 or so programs are going to break away and form their own kind of super conference and do this 2 semester model. And I think a lot of the other schools will say, like the mid-major Division Ones and obviously Division Two and Three, I don't see them ever getting on board with it because of the cost, because of the administration, because of the facilities. Like Chris Neal he's the coach at UNC Wilmington. He had a really good tweet talking about the challenges that mid-major colleges face, and a lot of people don't realize that. They just see the game schedule or you're a college coach, you're full time, you should just be able to do this. And it's like, no, there's a lot of other moving parts. And I mean, could they do it? Possibly. I think it would have to be like 10-10. I think the girls would only go for it if the season ended a little bit earlier, because one of the other complaints is it's like, well, the seniors don't get that, few months of being an actual student. They would lose that spring semester.
Right.
They'd be back in full on training. And I think that's for, you could agree or disagree, but for a college student, that's an important part of going to school, is like that social aspect of it. And when you are a full-time student athlete and you're not a non-athletic regular person, or NARP as we used to call them, you don't get to experience that. So I don't know. I think for the top 25 to 30 schools, maybe we're on a path to just like having an actual pyramid where the college program is the bottom of the USL, or MLS Next Pro or whatever, and the teams that move up are the ones that invest in the program. I mean, it's not that different from Ireland, where you had UCD, which is University College Dublin. They are part of the Irish pyramid. Even though it's a college, like, and the kids are students there, they can be promoted and relegated just like any other club. And so maybe we're on our path to, the NCAA has changed so much in the last 4 or 5 years, before, not having changed for like 20 years. There's been so much change now that it feels like we're not that far away from an actual pyramid starting to form, with the college programs that will continue to have a soccer program, because everyone's got these differing views on, should we do two models? Should we do, the fall and spring? Should we just do one? I think we're kind of headed down that path personally.
Yeah, can you imagine? I think you're right, and it's interesting you mentioned that. I didn't know that there was a college in Dublin doing that. When my son went over to England, he was with a team called Team Bath that wasn't a university team. They had a university team, but a lot of the students were going to school at the university, and they would go to school at the university, and then they would also play on this team bath. That was part of the system. They were promoted three times in 3 years at one point.
Hmm.
Scott Juniper, who's at UC Irvine, introduced my son to the program and helped him get over there. And I think that concept of you can go to school, maybe not even everybody on the team is at the school, but you can go to school here. They can use the school facilities. It helps the school fill dorms. It helps them fill some classes, but it's really part of the pro system. I
Hmm.
think, can you imagine that maybe the top 50 teams, if you've got 30 kids on each team, that's 1,500 kids that are now training towards the pro system.
Yeah.
And that I think that could really help the American pro landscape. I hate that we look personally, and this is just me. I don't like that we look at college sports as a training ground for the pros. In other words, we kind of
Hmm.
include it in the pro landscape, and we do it because of American football and
Hmm.
American men's basketball primarily. But women's basketball too, I guess. But that's why we look at it, and so we just approach all sports as this is the way this is the way that they all should be. But for non-revenue Olympic sports like soccer and whatever, bowling and rowing and track and all of that, it's their it's a different animal, and they're
Yeah.
being drug. I picture water skiing, right? You're hanging on to that tow rope and you're skiing, and then you get knocked down, but you're just hanging on, and you're getting
Hmm.
drugged through the water, and you're just eating water, and you can't unhook, and you're just being drugged along. I feel that's how Olympic sports are being treated right now. We've been thrown into these waters by American football and by men's basketball, and all of the other Division I sports now are just being drugged through the water, whether they want to or not. It's so
Hmm.
insane that University of Washington is in the ACC.
Yeah.
It's the most insane thing I've ever heard of in my life. And the fact that these students now talk about missing class time, talk about time on the road. Yeah, with a great coach and a great program, it can be done. But is there a better way to do this? I think it's pretty crazy. So I think the idea maybe that you mentioned is, and it has been kicked around. It's not like you and I are inventing, the wheel here. This idea has been
Yeah.
kicked around that maybe the top schools jump into and separate out, and then let the other mid majors, schools like Akron, it's been mentioned for years that they're struggling financially. They've been
Yeah.
talking about folding them in with Wright State for a long time. And to ask Akron to have to financially keep up with Notre Dame, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
is crazy that they don't have the endowment, that Notre Dame has. There's no way they're going to be able to keep pace. Not that, not that coach can't put a competitive team on the field. That's not the point. But if you keep raising the bar financially higher and higher and making it more and more difficult to compete and to get players, there's no way that they can, compete for a national title.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I think a lot of things need to be regionalized. And if you had college make up the base of the pyramid, for those that wanted to do it, then even for USL League One, it probably makes that league more stable because now you don't have
Right.
teams flying, cross country to play these games. You play
True.
in, four different, quadrants, and you'd make it opt in too. So like if you win the league, I mean, this is the same. I think it's the same in England. I know it's the same in Ireland. Like if you cannot financially handle being promoted, then you don't opt into that. You could still win the league, but like you just know you're not going to go up because you don't have the facilities. You don't want that extra burden of expenses that comes with being in a higher division. But you know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, we would have never been having, I don't think, having this conversation about college soccer being part of the pyramid. But because of the House ruling and because of the amateur status going out the window now, it's like why like we've already made this gigantic shift to kids are now able to be paid, like we're no longer concerned about amateur status, which was all the only thing anyone ever talked about with compliance was amateur status of players and making sure that you didn't
Right.
didn't break the rules. And now that that's out the window, it feels like we're still holding on to like the antiquated idea of every we play in the same conference as the football team or the basketball team. It's like, why don't you do what's best for the sport that you have, and maybe not make it financially like profitable, but at least you're not losing as much money every year as maybe you would be because you're cutting down on the flights. You're not traveling so far. Kids have more time to be in their classes. I know in the fall my grades like would dip at least like 3 or 4 percentage points because it was hard to like you miss class. Like it is what it is. Like you don't know what you missed in the class even if the lecture's recorded. um so I think hopefully, something needs to change in the U.S. soccer landscape, and there is an opportunity, I think, here with the World Cup being hosted, with MLS now going to a full calendar year or following the European, fall to spring. And hopefully USL launches their top division as well, which would be fall to spring. I don't know, when is that supposed to start? Is that 27, 28? I don't know what the actual launch date of
Yeah,
that
I
is.
don't know either. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But there's a reshuffling opportunity, and I think the schools that like your Notre Dames, your Stanfords, like why shouldn't Stanford be playing against League One opponents and USL Championship opponents and MLS Next Pro teams? Like why shouldn't they? Like they can do that with the facilities they have and the budget they have. I mean that's where they should be. I mean that's what would challenge them. So maybe we'll shift that way. Who knows? I think someone centrally in a leadership position in U.S. soccer hopefully steps up and says, "Hey, this is the ship, and this is kind of where we're going," and tries to get everyone aligned and on board with it. Because I've never seen a more fragmented ecosystem beneath, the pro environment and the youth space. Every league's got an acronym, and it's not as good as it was years ago. Like it just
I
isn't.
really thought we would have it would happen by now, but I figured with soccer, again, I thought American football and basketball would crack the door open first to this, and I thought we would have heard about a proposal by now. So, for those that don't know, what started this whole House versus NCAA ruling was the fact that American football college was talking about breaking away from the NCAA. And that began basketball to start talking about breaking away from the NCAA. I mean, honestly, what the NCAA needs basketball and football more then football and basketball need the NCAA.
Yeah.
Who's making the money here and who gets the kickbacks off the money? And the vast majority of the NCAA income is coming off of March Madness and then
Yeah.
American football after that. And if you took those two sports away, the NCAA is dead. They're bankrupt. They would
Yeah.
have to completely restructure. They would have to sell assets. They would have to condense, and they would have to become something else than what they are now. And so when that talk was happening, the NCAA went into full panic mode, and it was, well, let's do everything that we can to make this happen. And that's leading us to this whole Congress getting involved
Yep.
the government is doesn't make things better. We know that. I always love that Ronald Reagan quote. The nine scariest words in the world are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." It's not going to make it better. We already have a bloated administrative structure within the NCAA itself. And so, honestly, Matt, I was hoping that American football, the top schools, the SEC, and whatever other Big Ten schools would break away, and in basketball break away into these, bottom of the pyramid pro leagues, and then soccer would say, okay, now the door's open, we can do it
Mhm.
too, and then let all the other sports look. Most of these kids, as anybody really knows that studied this, uh, the American structure is no different than it is in England, in that if you're in a pro academy in England, if you're a youth player going through the pro academy, it's something like it's something like 0.7% make it pro. I
Yep.
think that's the number. And the US structure is no different.
Hmm.
So why are we screaming? And this has always driven me crazy, Matt, in youth sports. Why are we screaming always about the top 1% or less of the kids? And we're spending 99.9% of our time, effort, energy, money on that 1%. What about
Yeah.
the other 99%? What about the
Yeah.
99% of players that college soccer, if they make it, is their pinnacle? Heck, high school soccer is their pinnacle for what? What's the number? 83% roughly,
Yeah.
82% of kids, high school soccer and club soccer is their pinnacle. And yet we ignore those kids, right? And we
Hmm.
spend all of our time, effort, and energy on that 1%. And it frankly it drives me nuts.
Well, and I think the other part that gets lost is the U.S. doesn't get those Jamie Vardys because there is no place for them to play and move up. Really, the closest thing to a Jamie Vardy that we have is Patrick Agiamon from obviously being at he went to Eastern Connecticut for a year, which is obviously in my state, and then he went to use that to get to URI, and then he was at Charlotte FC. I got to watch him play a couple times over the last few years, and then obviously his big move to England. So, like not only does the pyramid structure need to exist for the clubs, but like it's for the guys that don't like they're not pro ready at 21 or 22, but they just exit the game entirely because there is no place for them to play reasonably. Like there's no like place for them to like okay, the calendar goes from fall to spring and they can have a job on the side and they can be play Sunday league, but Sunday league with like a purpose, like the club is trying to get promoted or something. Like those are the guys that like we don't have a Jamie Vardy, and we will never have a Jamie Vardy story in the US of some guy who's just bounced because the structure and the ecosystem doesn't exist to support him. And in a country that's this big, you would have at least 4 or 5 of those guys that could potentially make your World Cup squad and
Right.
make a difference. And we don't have that because the infrastructure, the ecosystem doesn't support them.
That I think that's true. No, I think that's true, and I think it's been proven year after year after year. It's very difficult.
Because Dom,
Matt, you
when I came back from Germany, it was like so that was in May, and I'm like, if I can't find a USL team and I can't get signed an MLS team, like where do I play? Do I play? UPSL? Do I play like NPSL?
Right.
Like there's no viable path out of that into the pro game. And until we have like an and that's why again I said yeah, I'd given up playing because I was about coaching. But I do think I probably would have continued to play a bit if like I could be in my own country and play on the side. But we just don't have that. It doesn't exist for any kids that are outside of college.
No, no, it doesn't. And I was talking to a friend of mine a couple podcasts ago, and his name's Benny Nego, and Benny he's involved in pro soccer here in the U.S. And we've talked about even if you make it pro, it's pay to play. It's
Yeah.
1,000% pay to play. When I coached pro, we had you know yeah you'd have an apartment with six guys living in a three-bedroom apartment. You know,
Hmm.
barely can pay for their own food, and definitely not saving any money, and absolutely can't buy a car,
Yep.
and can't go on dates. And what are you going to do with the date, even if you have a date? You're going to bring her back to your apartment with five other guys? The
Yeah.
apartment's like, what are you doing? That's not a life. And it is you. They all had side jobs. They all had to work in the summer, to just to survive. And the pro structure in the United States, unless you make it into the MLS, it's a pay to play structure.
Yeah.
And by the way, it's that way in most of the world. It's not just the United States. These guys playing in the fifth division in Germany, they have to have jobs or
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
that can help them because they don't make
Yeah.
enough. They're
Yeah.
barely, they were when my son was over in England in the fifth division, he was like, "Ooh, we won. We got a $50 bonus." It's like
Yeah.
50
Yeah.
bucks. What are you gonna do with 50 bucks? It's great.
Yeah, we had our club president show up with beer, and he was like, "Boys, I got you beer to celebrate the victory," because they pronounce the V's like W's and the W's like V's.
Right.
And no, I think the biggest difference is in those countries. I think there's a lot more scouts that are looking in the lower divisions to try and find
Absolutely.
that gem. And again, from the club's perspective, and this is the thing I've learned from my business as well, is the clubs are much more incentivized to keep their players healthy and want to make sure that you know they can use them to sell them on to make enough money to recoup for the academy. And obviously we don't have that
Right.
here. So what I've learned from my app, which is all about player wellness and reducing risk of injury and things that you would think are important, it is very hard in the US for us to sell to clubs. And that is because we have learned that the club is not really the stakeholder. It's the parent and the child. Because if the child picks up an injury, now maybe they're not getting the scholarship to that school. They're not getting, they're not playing at the level that, they would hope to play at. And so we're actually changing our business model a little bit to have a player specific app that parents and players can sign up for, because at the end of the day, like, they are the stakeholders. The clubs are not really so much, because if they send the kid on to college or he signs a pro deal, they're not really getting anything back on that investment. Whereas in a European country, that kid, if he gets sold on for $1 million, $2 million, or even like a smaller fee, that might fund the academy for the next 5 years. And so, like, with us, our biggest market for the app is colleges, because the colleges know that they need to win, their jobs on the line. They know that they need to keep their players healthy, and they're dealing with these condensed schedules, so they need all the tools at their disposal to keep the best players on the field. But at the club level, we'll still get the really top ones that are very interested, because they just like, all else aside, they're like, we want to provide the best possible environment for our kids, so we need them to have this. Though, those are your really high level, your Sousas, your clubs that are like putting tons of kids in Division I and college programs. And outside of that, the ones that don't really care that much, the ones that are just there to take the I hate to say it, but the money at the end of the day, if the kid gets hurt or not, it's not really of consequence to the club, but it is of consequence to the player and the parent, because ultimately they're the ones that are trying to navigate this system. So it's been interesting to kind of come to that realization over the last 2 to 3 years. We're like, why are we having so much success with the college programs, and we're really struggling outside of those top, those really high level clubs? Why are we not getting more of the youth onto our platform. And so we're like, maybe we have to pivot this a little bit because at the end of the day, the clubs are less of the stakeholder and the parents and the players are.
We've gotten a little bit ahead of ourselves, Matt. I do want to, because I want to talk about this because I know a little bit about what you guys are trying to do. And as a college coach, I think we had a $15,000 polar system,
Hmm.
at the college, back in the day when that's all there was. And for those that don't know, that's the straps that you see the pros wearing around their chest. It's some sort of now it's not just heart rate monitoring, which is basically all it was back in the day. But now it's GPS units and of course we've seen what they've come up with the World Cup balls now, which we can talk about if you want. But
Yeah.
how did you get involved with monitoring systems and explain to us, please, what the Pulse app is and how it's different than these expensive straps and systems that go on players now.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first ideas for the app started actually when I was in Germany. So while I was over there, I was working for the club that I had coached for my senior year at Fairfield. So I was actually collecting Survey Monkey forms from the kids on how they were feeling, what their training load was. I put it in a Google sheet for all the coaches to see, and then they would use that to plan training to a higher level. So they would say, okay, this player's fatigued or this player's training load is X, we need to back off or go heavier. And so from that, I was like, well, there should be, this is the early days of apps. Now everyone can make an app. You can ask Claude Code to build you an app and it'll do it. But I was like, this doesn't really exist in the marketplace on the youth side of things. There's always the high end systems that the pros are using. But if I don't have GPS and I don't have a heart rate monitor system, like what's the best way for me to get information from my kids that I can use to deliver a higher quality session for them? And it's like just ask them how they're feeling. So I taught myself how to code. I took a online course on Udemy to learn how to code in Swift, and because I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if other people are going to like this. So I don't know if I want to take money and investment on it and not have it work out. But I was like, let me code it and see if I can do it, and if that works, then we'll maybe evolve it. So gave it to a bunch of my friends. They all liked it. The original app was called Soccer Pulse because it was only meant for soccer teams, and then the feedback was very positive. So we went and we built an Android version as well. And then in the last few years, we had a lot of non-soccer sports say, "Hey, we use Soccer Pulse," and even though it says soccer in the name, and me and my business partners made the decision to rebrand the app as Player Pulse, even though we're all still soccer guys. We're like, this kind of opens up, I think, more markets for us. But we have like University of Michigan women's lacrosse who use us. They had a really good season this year, but they use it in conjunction with Catapult. So this is not meant to replace a heart rate monitor or GPS system if you can get it. It's meant to augment that. And we have a bring your own wearable policy where it's like if you want to use Apple Health Kit, which is one of the other cool things we could talk about with the NCAA approving the smartwatches that kids can wear now in games, and it's hit or miss on whether it gets really accurate data, but it should be within 5% of the actual accepted range. And so our system is about giving coaches simple feedback that's easy to collect that they can then use to make decisions with their players. So we're all about, it's quick to submit. It's very lightweight. It's not meant to be this, sometimes you look at these systems and you're like, I have no idea what this means. I need someone to come in here and interpret this for me. So it's meant for the layman coach who maybe doesn't have a sports science background. And now we're going in the direction of really giving the player their information too, so they know their own training load, they know their own wellness score, they have tips on how to get better, and they can bring in their wellness data or their objective data from their monitors as well to paint that full picture for them. And we want to educate the parents too. I've tons of parents I talk to don't really understand training load. They don't understand that training 8, 9, 10 sessions in a week is not good
Well,
for
you
your
might as
kid.
well explain it a little bit because look, I think most of the people that listen to our podcast are parents and players, although I've got quite a few college coaches. I had no idea till I went to MLS Flex how many college coaches listen, but they do.
That's awesome.
So, but for the parents and players listening to this, Like, how does this work from a player? So a player gets what? What do they get from you? Is it a watch? Is it
So it's purely an app for them. So the new app we're going to launch in July is going to look a lot different than our current one, but it has a lot of the similar features. So I'll talk a little bit more about that one. So they'll put in their wellness and how they're feeling. So this is like, what's your soreness, your energy, your stress, your sleep, what's your mood. We have a mannequin that they can tap on to indicate soreness sites. So like we'll communicate to the coach like if they have unilateral soreness on like the left side or just the right side of the body. It's like, hey, just be aware of this because this could be a precursor to an injury. And then after training, it's training load. So it asks them, what's your RPE? So RPE is rate of perceived exertion. How demanding do you think the session was for you? And then we use that plus minutes to do acute load, which is their 7 day average, and chronic load, which is their 28 to 30 day average. And then the comparison of the two is the load ratio. So this is like, what are you doing recently to improve your fitness levels? Are you doing too much? Are you doing too little? Or are you in that sweet spot of like 0.8 to 1.3 where you're not doing too much that you're going to get hurt, but you're not doing so minimal that you're losing your fitness level? And so part of that is education. And, you know, a lot of players download the app and they've never heard of training load before. They've never heard of RPE. So it's on us to try and guide them and explain, hey, you know, if you want to, if your most important game is on Saturday, you don't really want to be doing a super physically demanding session on Friday because you're not going to recover in time to play well in the game. And like one of our mottos is you know, availability is your most important metric, right? So if you're more available for games, if you're not picking up injuries, you're going to have a better chance of being a better athlete because you're not missing sessions, but also you're at lower risk of injury because we know that players that have a high chronic load are at lower risk because their bodies are able to handle the demands of the game that they're about to play. So our mission as a company is to make sure that if you're a coach or a club or a college or now, you know, the direction we're heading, a parent and a player, and you know that this is important or you think, you know, injury prevention is important and, you know, you want to be a part of this, you shouldn't be limited by having to buy a $250, you know, heart rate monitor unit to get this information. You know, you can still make actionable decisions with just data that you would report to yourself. And then obviously as a coach, when I see this information come into my dashboard, I'm like, okay, everyone feels good, everyone's in the green, we can go hard today. I can push everyone and we can improve our fitness levels. Or, oh wow, like most everyone feels good, but I've got two or three that are really lagging from the session yesterday. Some have a, you know, unilateral soreness in their quad. So maybe I make them a neutral. Maybe I make them a bouncer in training. Maybe I say, hey, last 20 minutes, just step out. You know, so we make the load a little bit lighter for you today. And it's those just nuances that are not that complicated. You know, you don't have to tear up your whole session plan to implement them. And then from a player's perspective, you know, maybe, you know, you don't do the extra 3 mile run that you were going to do. Maybe you do a 20-minute strength recovery session or whatever it is, but like at least let us guide you along that journey to help make sure you stay injury free. Because with the roster caps now, college coaches, I mean, I'm sure you know this, they are so injury averse now for players. I know a coach that said he makes their players sign a waiver to certify that they've not had a major head injury in the last year because he's like, if they do and I give them a full scholarship and they come in, they get hit in the head, I'm now out of pocket for that kid for the next 4 years potentially because they can't play again. So, and I know concussion is a bit of a different injury outside of, you know, your overuse injuries, but I know everyone with the roster caps at Division I, you're much more valuable as a player if you can show that you are not injury prone. So not only can you play, but you're like, I'm always available. Like I don't pick up injuries, you know, because, you know, players that are injury prone, they're a gamble. You know, they come in and maybe they're hurt, maybe they're not. But we know from, you know, teams that win championships that the teams that have everyone available, their best players available, those are the ones that are most likely to win, you know, those games when it's important. So yeah, that's what our mission is trying to blend the objective and subjective data, but making sure it's accessible to players and clubs and families that, you know, you don't need a heart rate monitor or GPS system if you can't afford it.
what do you think, Matt, is going on with ACLs? Look, I coached men and women simultaneously between high school and college. I put in probably close to over 20 seasons of each between men and women. And on the men's side, we were seeing one ACL every 5, 6 years. And on the women's side, every other year, maybe you'd have an ACL. And we're
Yeah.
seeing a rash of ACL tears on the women's side. It's almost pandemic levels. It's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
And on the men's side, we're starting to see ACL tears. I have one theory, but I don't know that it holds up. I think bladed boots and artificial turf combined are a deadly combination. I think it's
Yeah.
absolutely. If I was playing on artificial turf, I would tell my kid, you're not wearing bladed boots ever. You will wear
Yeah.
rounded studs. I think that's part of it. I think because bladed boots just grab too much. But I think there's more than that going on. I think we've got overload. I think players are overloading, and I think nutrition also could have something to do with it because the
Mhm.
types of foods that players are ingesting over the past 10 years or so are just not as high quality foods. But I think, what do you think about the overload issue, or what do you think about the ACL epidemic as a whole?
I'm not going to pretend like I have all the answers, but I have a couple. So I actually used to subscribe to your theory of the artificial turf being a big issue. But I went, and again, this is just anecdotal. So I went back over the last 8 years, and I was like, okay, let me list all the kids that I know that I've coached personally and that tore their ACL. I want to know if it was in a game. I want to know if it was first half, second half. I want to know like if it was like the first game of the weekend or the second half of the last game of a showcase. So I actually went through all the kids that I had coached personally that have torn ACLs, and the list, like thankfully, knock on wood, was about 8 players deep. Which for coaching 2 teams a year for the last 10 years, I'm pretty happy with that. But obviously, anytime someone tears their ACL, you're absolutely devastated for them. It's the worst thing in the world, and you think, well, what could I have done different? What could is there something that happened that led to it? And of the 8, only 2 of them for me were on turf. 6 of the other ones were on grass. Almost all of them were in the first half of a game. Most of and this again, this is girls. Most of them were non-contact. One was landing off a header awkwardly on turf. That
Yeah,
was one
which
of the
blows
turf
me
ones.
away too, that most of these are non-contact that I'm seeing too.
Yeah.
Nobody
Yeah.
around.
Yeah. I
Right.
think I think a lack of strength training is a huge one. I think because clubs don't really provide this as a service, they're strapped enough to try and get kids, the 3 training sessions a week in a decent environment. A lot of them, so strength is like, well, we can't do that. We don't know who to hire. We're not gonna. That's a line item. And again, like it comes back to like who's the stakeholder? Is it the parent and the player, or is it the club? And that's why I'd encourage every parent to have your kid doing strength training at least twice a week when you're in season. Off season, it should be 3 at least if you want to build muscle. But I think for girls, it's a combination of being either overtrained or undertrained, or under recovered, and that kind of speaks to your nutrition thinking of even like the kids that I coach. I mean, and this is where it's really helpful the to see how much they slept the night before, because that's my earliest like warning sign. If a kid puts that they slept like 4 or 5 hours a night, I'm like, whoa, like I'm gonna make you a neutral or a bouncer, and you're not doing any of the contact
Right.
11v11 or whatever, because I don't trust you in a multi-plane space to be able to decelerate. I don't trust your nervous system to be able to react appropriately based on how much you
Wow.
slept last night. Um,
Wow.
and like that's the first like immediate red flag for me is how much they've slept. I think the other one, honestly, like I coach a lot of obviously girls. They all play high school. It's not like MLS homegrown where they some of them don't play high school. But I've watched some of those sessions, and they're the two extremes of like being run into the absolute ground or standing around doing nothing. And they very rarely thread the needle of like the exact amount of intensity running decelerating that is necessary. So then you're playing 4 or 5 games a week, and that's where the training stimulus is coming from, is coming from the games. And this isn't a knock on high school. Like I think there are club coaches too that don't, they think they're pushing their kids enough, but they're actually not. And that's where the feedback is so helpful, is knowing, okay, I thought I pushed my group hard, but a couple thought the RP was like a 2 or 3, and then some thought it was a 7 or 8. But having that feedback loop, makes your training sessions better. And I think a lot of us don't deliver the prescribed amount of intensity for the session. We either overdo it and we just put players on the line and we run the absolute crap out of them, or the session is not intense enough that they don't get the right training stimulus. And that's also an injury risk, because if you don't have enough chronic load, that's why when kids that have come back from injury, the physio or the athletic trainer says, yep, they're good to go, and they jump back into the session, they get hurt again immediately. It's like, well, why does that happen? Because your chronic load is so low. You're not ready to handle like, you got to build it up gradually and progressively. And that's a
Agreed.
huge thing, is players coming back from ACL tear, they get fully cleared and they're like, okay, I'm good. And not just the body is not ready, but the mind is not ready. They are like, they're afraid they're going to do it again. They don't trust
Right.
themselves. And
Absolutely.
we see a ton of kids re-tear their ACLs the second time on the same knee, because they're either like, they're so worried about it, or they're not, like, they're cleared but they're not really ready. And on the flip side, I've seen kids come back from an ACL tear like stronger and better
Seen
players.
it too.
Like, and I don't know if it's down to the player themselves. I really go back to, I think strength training is so important when you're coming back from an ACL tear.
That's what I think it
Like
is.
like you
Absolutely,
you
that's what I think it is.
you have to be, for me, like 10 to 15% stronger than before you had the injury. Because if you only
If
get
there's
back
a
to the
difference in
level,
a rehab between the players that do what the trainer gives them during that rehab session and the players that train on their own too,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or how intensely they train in the rehab sessions and then work on their own too. Because I've noticed the same thing. Players have come back much stronger and a much better player after an injury, but
yeah,
that's probably 10%. Most of
yeah,
them don't. Most of them
yeah.
are scared to death that they're going to do it again.
I saw we had one or two that they came back and they ended up quitting, because not because they didn't enjoy playing anymore. They were literally petrified of doing it again. And they
Right.
just they were like, this isn't fun for me because I can't get that out of my brain, and I'm not.
Right.
But I've seen other kids where they came back and I was like, oh my God, like you are better, objectively better today than you were when you pre-injury.
Yeah,
And
it's fascinating.
a lot of it, I think, is really down to the player, the mentality. They have to have the right support system around them. But like strength training is like if you don't strength train when you're coming back, like, and you should be doing it anyways. But like if you don't do that when you're coming back from a catastrophic knee injury, you are setting yourself up for failure. Like you will not come back the same player.
I love that you brought up sleep you got me you put a thought in my head that I've never really had before, and that I've always known how important sleep is for recovery. That's when the body does its repair work mentally and physically and prepares you for the next day. And we also talking about and maybe it's anecdotal, but I don't think it is. I'm sure there's a study on this that over the past 10, 15 years, ACL injuries have increased.
Mhm.
And I'll bet you, I would like to see somebody do a study on this one. Sleep has decreased because of the phone.
Yeah, I was because of screens.
It's
Yeah,
because of
100%.
screen time
Yeah,
that young people, as opposed to 25 years ago, are getting less sleep because of screen time, which is leading to sleep deprivation, which is leading to physical and emotional instability.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I think it's also the sleep quality too, because you could sleep 8 hours, but like, for example, like, hopefully none of the players listening to this do this, but if you drink alcohol before you go to sleep, I mean, that objectively will really mess up your sleep pattern. Like even just like a single beer or a single glass of wine, that will really, like, you know, sleep quality. You can sleep the same amount of hours, but the sleep quality in the recovery process is not the same. It's that, and I do think too, like my daughter's about to go into kindergarten, and I think a lot of kids bite off way more than they can chew in terms of class load, and now they're up. I've seen it too many times to count in the last. I got way too much homework. I've got 4 AP classes I'm doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. It's like, well, you got to focus on something, because like in college, you can't make the use of, oh, well, I've got too much classwork, so I'm not coming to practice today. You got
Right.
to learn to balance it. So if you bite off more than you can chew with the APs that you're taking, and now all of a sudden you're not showing up to practice, or if you are, it's on 3 hours of sleep. Like, who's that good for? Like, and like for those that are listening, like, don't bite off more than you can chew as a junior, as a senior. Don't load up on APs to try and impress some college and then have the most miserable year ever because you have no time and you can't even do the things that you signed up to do well. Because then I've seen kids just drop out of playing because they're like, I was like, you're never at practice, and when you are here, you're on 2 hours of sleep, and you object like you're a good player, but like not on 2 hours of sleep, and not when you're not here. And those are the kids like in our academy system. We just moved down to the second team because we're like, there are other kids that are here that will take your place because you're not able to devote as much time to this as you think you are. And, at the end of the day, it hurts you, unfortunately. So, yeah, sleep is important.
Yeah. Like I said, you put that thought in my head. I'd never really thought about the correlation between when smartphones came into our society, screen time, sleep, injury, and what we're seeing going on societally with injuries and kids struggling emotionally. They're just
Yeah.
it's hard, seems like it's harder than ever for kids to find that balance emotionally and physically.
Yeah, one of the things I do like about our app is because it does ask the player, how you're feeling. And a comment I got from a coach early on when we started this was, I like the app because it makes the players take a second of their day to ask themselves how they
I
feel.
like
So
that.
they have to do that moment of introspection. And if you're having that moment, then you're like, man, I really didn't sleep well last night, and I stayed up all night playing video games. And now I played today, and my coach's feedback rating, he gave me a 4 out of 10 because I didn't play well, and I know I didn't play well. And it's like now they can start to maybe connect the dots a little bit in terms of what is important for high level performance, and sleep is such an important part of that. So that yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we've started to go also in this player app direction, because um we've sold enterprise, so like we sell it to clubs and colleges, and they sign up for the number of seats. But we've had so many requests from players that are like, I want to use this on my own, even if my coach isn't using it, because I feel it makes me a better player. Like, okay, like, there's a big enough market, I think, now for that we can justify building out a new player specific app for that, because we just said it, in the US, the kid is the stakeholder and the parent is the stakeholder, and the clubs are really not so much, because they're not going to be selling this player on to make $1 million, $2 million. So the players and the parents have to look out for themselves.
Do you notice a difference in how men fill out the app as opposed to women and the girls? It's like, are the girls more introspective and
I,
detailed than the men are?
So we have a comment box that we allow players to put more information. So there's a comment box in the wellness report, and there's a comment box for the post training or game report. Um, I would lean to say that the girls give more information. However, we had a club use this at MLS Next Fest, or no, the GA Cup down in it was Cedar Stars, and they were one of the only non MLS academies to make it to that event, and I think they made it to the quarterfinals. And the comment that I got from the coach was, and he's working with some very high level players. This is with their U16 team, and they're very, very good. And he said, I got more feedback from the boys in the last 2 days using the app when they first started, in terms of the comment box of like things that they did well in training, what was going on in their life. He was like, than I did the entire 8 months before that. And
Wow.
I think boys are a lot less likely to open up about things. But I will say, as a male that coaches females, I think it can be difficult for a female player to bring something up to a male coach just face to face. It's much easier for them to put something in an app
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, I'm struggling mentally," and
Okay.
then before training, I get to them and say, "Hey, let's have a conversation. Like, what's going on? How can I help you? How can I support you?" So I think boys, just because of that, like, persona of you don't open up and say anything because you're a man, maybe lends them to want to put things in the app more. But for girls, I think it's really helpful when you're not a female coach coaching females, that they feel that they can at least seed the conversation and start it with a breadcrumb, and then you can kind of pick up the rest of the trail for them.
Yeah, both interesting perspectives. I was just thinking to myself, and I was thinking, man, I don't, okay, look, it's my problem. I don't want to deal with this. I just want to keep it. It's like, let's just go play. Come on, stop it.
Yeah,
That's how I would have been, and a
yeah,
lot of males. But I did. I'm also a different generation. You're talking. I like that it's an app because the kids are used to putting down thoughts in a phone,
yeah,
in an app. So the fact
yeah.
that these generations are used to it, that's how many of them do communicate, leads me to think that, boy, you're onto something. This is really good. I like this. It's a little different than I thought it was because I don't know that we've ever talked about this.
Yeah.
And I really like the input. I think as a college coach, I definitely could have used this. How does it, what does the college coach see? How easy is it for them to, because anybody who's ever been in a college coach's office, I would have maybe 15 minutes a day to have
Yeah.
time to go over something like this. Is it quick for a college coach? Is it efficient? How quickly can they garner and get an idea for what's going on?
Yeah, it's quick for both because we found like if the players have to do this extensive eval, they're not going to do it. They're just going to, skip it. So for the player on average, it takes 15 to 30 seconds for them to put in that information.
Oh,
And we've got
wow.
little streaks for them and we've got XP coming because everyone wants to level up. So, any incentive for them to put in the information and engage with it. But from the coach, it's built by coaches for coaches. I told you at the beginning of the podcast, like even though we went to, Player Pulse, not Soccer Pulse anymore, all the guys involved are soccer, minded. And, for me, it's like, give me the spark notes. Tell me what I need to know heading into this session, so that I can deliver the best quality session. So, for example, we really curate the notifications. So, like if someone's sleep drops significantly, when I pull up my dashboard, I can obviously see all the players and their most recent report, but I'll already have that notification that says, "Hey, Sarah's sleep dropped significantly from the last report that she put in." Or we actually had a youth national team ask us to build the unilateral soreness reporting, so that if they put on the mannequin, it was just their right quad and not both. It would let the coach know, "Hey, so and so reported unilateral soreness." So again, you can get them to the athletic trainer, and you already know that before you've even opened the app because it's coming in that notification. So yeah, we've
Wow.
tried to make it as easy as possible, for everyone, and even in the club space, we heard a lot of feedback that they didn't want to have two different calendars because they have like the admin calendar that like Team Snap or Playmetrics or whatever they're using, and then they didn't want to have to put the calendar in our app as well. So we're like, okay, let's create a feature where you can sync the calendar. So it's one of my favorite things. Like I've got my Playmetrics calendar plugged in to my PlayerPulse app, and it just automatically sends out the notifications after training and games, for the kids to put in their stuff. I don't have to update two different calendars in two different places, which is really nice. And if it's not easy to use and actionable and quick to get into, then what's the point of collecting the data if you're not going to use it? So that's kind of our motto is it's and when honestly we take a lot of feedback from coaches that say, "Hey, I want it to do this," and if I hear that from two or three other coaches, I'm like, okay, we're going to put that in the roadmap, because if multiple people are saying they would like it to do something, then there's probably some value in it too. And I think that's been the biggest problem in the product world in general, is the product gets built by someone that doesn't use it. And I think that's why we've grown so well, is because like I use it daily, but also like the people that are using it, they give us feedback and they tell us what they like and what they don't like, and that's how we build a better product that hopefully keeps players on the field, and I think more importantly helps coaches deliver those higher quality training sessions that are so important. I pride myself in creating a really top level environment for the kids, whether the players are top level or not. That doesn't mean that we can't create a top level environment for them. So yeah, it's a tool that I think should help make coaches' lives better and easier and help them be a better coach.
Well, I was really excited to have you on, and for our listeners, I was excited that you've offered a 10% discount if they put in SRUSA 26 code in there. Then coaches can get 10% off of the Player Pulse platform when
Yeah,
purchasing
yeah.
it through the website. So where is the website? How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the website is playerpulseapp.com. So the app is available on Android, iOS, and we do have a web app now, which is usually you can put up on your laptop, which is great. But our player specific app is coming out in July, so that'll be July 1. And once that launches, that code will apply to that as well. So if you're an individual player or a parent and you want to subscribe and use this throughout the summer of July and August and through the year, you can use that code as well, and that will give you access to it. But right now, on the Player Pulse website, you can only sign up if you are a coach or a like an administrator of a program because they would pay for the seats in the organization. But that's why we're going away from that model because again, we want to give access to the people that want to use this, for their kids, and that's the player and the parent. So I'll send you all that information when once we go live with it. But I've seen it and it looks really good, so I'm excited for the players to have their own app just for them.
I think it's brilliant. I think it's great. So that's SRUSA 26. Coaches put it in there, and this is a tool that's definitely going to help coaches manage their players better, but also help players, understand why they're underperforming.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly.
Brilliant.
Don, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. This was great. I had a great time.
Thanks, man. This has been great, Matt. I really appreciate it. And yeah, well, let's do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe when we get close to preseason, that's always fun. Everyone loves to have a podcast when a college preseason is about to start.
Let's do that. Let's plan on that.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks
Okay,
again.
buddy. Thanks. Talk to you soon.